Nick, it seems all but assured that the Indianapolis Colts will be moving on from Carson Wentz in some capacity, whether they release him, whether they try to trade him. And we've all thought maybe they trade for another quarterback. But not so. The Colts seem to be happy with one of their own. And I think you have a little bit more on the story.
Yeah, absolutely right there. I think young quarterback Sam Ehlinger out of the University of Texas had kind of flew under the radar last season as obviously a backup to Carson Wentz. But like you said, with Wentz more than likely out the door, and the Colts are looking for a replacement for Wentz. Like you said, there's conversations about them maybe trading for a veteran, but there's also been some stories inside the Colts organization about how they feel about Ehlinger. And this is from Colts coach Frank Reich. This was back week 17, week 18 of last season. He was talking about Sam Ehlinger here. He said, Sam's got that it factor. Sometimes you say that when somebody flashes here or there. Sam has been flashing in these moments his whole life. Okay, it's obviously very favorable. The it factor, that's kind of that extra little edge that a lot of coaches really admire in players, and specifically the quarterback. And then Colts GM Chris Ballard also chimed in about Ehlinger. He said, Chris Ballard spoke very highly of Ehlinger's performance. He says, we like Sam. We think he's definitely a guy that's made of all the right stuff. So obviously when they said all this, they were talking about Ehlinger when he was a backup. But just to give a little context here, so I'm obviously a Cowboys fan, and I kind of grew up a lot when Tony Romo was coming into the scenes as a backup. And this sounds very, very similar to how the Cowboys organization described Romo. Like they loved Romo. He was undrafted free agent. They loved him as a backup. All the coaches and GM and scouts and all that and the Jones family, all that, they were very supportive, very positive on Romo. This sounds very, very similar. This almost sounds like the Colts are potentially planning to move off Carson Wentz and not make a move for a veteran and instead ride with Sam Ehlinger going into next season. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think is going on here?
So I like Ehlinger. He seems interesting. In college, he was a very, very productive player. And I think one thing that we need to look at is he is certainly a dual threat quarterback. He holds the record for most rushing touchdowns in a season by a quarterback at Texas. He ran for 16 touchdowns his sophomore year in 2018. He also ran for almost 500 yards the next year. He ran for almost 700 yards. So he is most certainly a dual threat quarterback. He's got some legs. He's able to move a little bit. He was a good passer, and he was pretty accurate with the ball. In the Big 12, he also holds the record for most consecutive pass attempts without an interception at 308. That same year that he rushed for 16 touchdowns. So he seems accurate. He seems pretty good. A 4.8 for a quarterback 40 time is not too bad. It's not Lamar Jackson, it's not Kyler Murray, but he's pretty mobile. So I like him as a prospect. I think I don't know how he's developed because there really hasn't been too many previews of him as a professional player. But I mean, like you said with Romo, they liked him as a backup. If you like him as a backup and you're willing to test the waters, I think there's some merit to doing so.
Yeah, and there's really two additional factors here that I think the Colts are considering is, so 2 years ago, they felt they're in win now mode. So they brought in Phillip Rivers. They made the playoffs, didn't make a run. The following year, they traded for Carson Wentz, gave up a first-round pick, gave some draft capital, just missed the playoffs, obviously, with the heartbreaking loss to Jacksonville. So the Colts for 2 years treated themselves as if they're in win now mode, and they traded assets specifically for Wentz to try and get the veteran quarterback to try and take him over the top. Well, that obviously didn't work. And so now they're sitting here and they're probably thinking, look, if we go after a veteran quarterback again, let's say they go out and trade for Garoppolo. Ballard and Reich are like, look, if we get Garoppolo, are we suddenly better than the Bills? Are we better than the Chiefs? Are we better than Cincinnati? Are we better than the Ravens? Are we better than the Chargers? You can go down the list. They still may not even be a playoff team. They're probably not even still the best team in their division, even if they get a guy like Garoppolo. So I said, look, we're not going to give up draft capital to maybe not even be a top tier team. We've got a guy that we've said and we believe has that it factor. He's got the right mentality. 4-year starter at Texas. Was the leader of that team going through a lot of transitions. This is a mature guy. This guy's handled a lot. Being a quarterback at Texas is a big deal. A lot of publicity, both good and bad. I think they're tired of giving up capital to potentially get a veteran that won't even take them deep in the playoffs, and they're going to roll the dice on this young kid.